Once upon a time, there were people called Phrygians living in the ancient world around modern-day Anatolia. The legend says that they were missing a king, but a wise oracle solved this power vacuum by appointing the next random passerby as their new king. This random person was a peasant called Gordion that was traveling with his ox cart, and soon there would be a city called Gordion, and inside the palace of the kings was an ox cart. In this legendary ox cart, there was a mysterious knot tied around it. The firm knot that was seemingly impossible to open became also a religious item along the ox cart. The legend said that the man who would untie the knot would become the master of whole Asia. And so it was that Alexander the Great arrived to the Phrygia and faced the conundrum of the Gordian knot. The accounts vary if Alexander used just brute force of his sword to cut it open, or if he actually solved the conundrum by manipulating the ox cart itself. But either way, he did solve this conundrum. He had unraveled the secret powers of the King Gordion. How is this story related to the symbol of a squared loop? Well, it will give you important elements of the ancient world that will make you understand the power of the knots. They do not hold just everyday items together. They have utilitarian use, but they can actually build societies around them, like in the case of the Phrygians. The power of tying down mythical kings' power in the center of their kingdom, and how unleashing this spirit of the old king could lead into the conquest of the whole known world around them. Another point I would like to take from this tale is the ox cart. Although legend describes the king as a simple peasant, the ox or horse and the wheeled cart that it was pulling, this was prehistoric power symbol for the Indo-European people. They basically conquered nations with carts that were pulled by animal power. Not just warfare was revolutionized by this animal power, but the whole agricultural economy in the long run. And the knot is what makes the animal husbandry possible. When we dwell into these myths that surround the symbol of the loop square, then you will notice a clear connection of loops and knots and animals. Keep this in your mind as you try to understand the ancient people and their symbol. Knots and rope-like symbols are universal all over the world. Most notable knot, known as the sailor knot or Turk's head knot, were interwoven strands that form a closed loop. In Finland, this knot was tied to the place where lost item should be, and the item would be discovered after it. You probably know this knot type from the textiles of the rocks, where they have remained to this day. From these strands of rope appear the first examples of loop square symbols. Loop square was not just an ornament, but it was a symbol of good luck that people added to their buildings. It protected from bad luck and bad spirits. It is found from many household items, many times next to a Finnish swastika, ikiturso. Sometimes the loop square closely resembles a swastika, but this loop square symbol was much more common than swastikas as an ornament. It is a prehistoric symbol, like the swastika, but it has received a name of St. John's Cross from the Christian times. It is very interesting to ponder why this symbol is connected to the John the Baptist. I personally think that the name etymology for the Christian variant comes instead from the Apostle John, who was a fisherman. And here we have pieces of fishing net from Finland that date back to 10,000 years ago, to the Mesolithic Stone Age. These are the oldest examples of knots we have, and they happen to be Turkish knots, the same ones we found from ornaments all over the world. This is a good example of how this innovation of knots makes also calorie gathering from the nature much more easier. Bow and spear are nice things for hunting, but the ability to make knots is much more important tool. Even during the late 19th century, when Finnish peasants were required by law to hunt beasts to reduce cattle loss for the crown, they used nets and spears instead of firearms to be more efficient. The whole village, from every woman to a child, would create a sound wall and run the animals to the carefully planned entrapment area, where the man would finish the predators with their spears. This communal hunting style is exactly how many Native Americans in Mississippi regions are recorded to hunt their game. And look at this. Even they use this symbol in their artwork. What is a loop after all? It is a middle face of a knot. What is a loop square? It is the eye of the net. I must point out that the recorded fishing methods of Lenape people in Delaware area were very similar to the Finns with their sophisticated traps and communal hunting style. Now compare this communal hunting method to an individual man spending a whole day in the nature without capturing anything because luck is not on his side. At best, individual traps could be used if the whole village does not join for the hunt. Once again, these traps work the best when there is a knot involved. It adds the probability of a successful hunt. Again, very useful innovation that we happen to overlook. At this point, I can reveal another Finnish name for the loop square. Käpälikkö. It means basically animal pawns. The name etymology leads us to hunting and fishing. Invention of the knot is a major technological breakthrough that balances the struggle against the nature. It is a symbol of taking hold of the luck, literally. Once again, let's go back to the swastika, that is also some sort of symbol of luck. As we went through the swastika video, the oral poems connects it to the first beast, that of course comes from the world tree. These beasts of the world tree bring disease and trouble to humans. This marking of the world tree is a nature's natural chaos that is supposed to stabilize the luck for everyone. And once again, we have to understand the pagan concept of capital and work. For example, animal welfare was very poor in the Finnish society during the 18th century. If you happen to treat your cattle well, feed them properly through winter, it might result in higher production of dairy. Your neighbors didn't see you investing in your capital. They thought you were a witch that used magic to steal butter and milk from their cattle. The amount of luck was same for everyone, and the rich could only get rich by the poor getting poorer. The magical symbol of swastika was supposed to balance these unfair tricks in life and return everything in natural state, or in the chaos state of the nature. It is obvious that loop square was a different luck symbol to swastika. It allowed gathering of the luck from the nature. Envy did not fit for hunting and fishing. Luck for hunting and fishing was allowed. But the first catches were sacrificed for their deities, of course. I do not think that it is a coincidence either that knots were used in heraldic emblems during Middle Ages all over Europe, and this weird trivial knot, a symbol of a squared loop, is very prominent. Notice how squared loop is not very functional as a knot compared to those other designs. Loops and knots are recorded to be used in many rituals and practices when interacting with the spiritual world in Finland. Here a Finnish peasant has tied a young tree to a bush and he is calling for his lost cattle from the loop that it forms. Apparently the earth people would entrap people's cattle in their mirror world, and this was a way to connect it into this alternative reality. Quite pesky creatures if they manage to steal the peasant's cattle and hide it. And here's another trick to call for your hidden cattle, this time from the loop that your horse's collar form. Do you see the connection to the magical ox cart that held so much power? The loop and the animal are connected. So what is exactly this mirror world of the earth people that these men are peeking into? It is the afterlife, and the earth people who reside there are their lost ancestors. You can also take more drastic measures with the earth people and tie some ants on the branches. These ants are representatives of earth people. You cast a spell, which is basically a ransom letter. In this spell, you tell them that you will release them if they release your cattle. In this picture, you see a similar spell against trolls. You tie this rock to the branch, and it summons a hernia on the troll, and thus it will stop bothering you. Sometimes the nature itself creates loops and holes that are the works of gods. These holes are more powerful than man-made knots. Through this birch's hole, sick children were being passed through to cure them, or young brides passed through it to bring some good luck with children-bearing years. Somehow it could unleash the power of the forest god for them. Branches of the tree that had turned against themselves, forming a loop, were known as forest god's locks. You didn't look through this one, but you used very complex spell rituals that had knots and ropes being connected to this piece of wood. Apparently, you would get rid of bad spirits from the forest with it. Also, the sick would move through this one in sauna to get healed in one part of the ritual. Do you see through these examples how knots, loops, and looking through these loops are closely connected? What can we make from it? It seems like knots and rope making as technological innovations brought same kind of mythological concepts to the minds of people like metallurgy did. No more did people worship the celestial skies, but something more pragmatic they used in their everyday life. Rope is very magical, and a knot is very magical with the abilities it can do. We might have forgotten this, but the symbol persists even to this day. I remember playing as a child on the Turkish carpet that had these knots in them, and how they made me travel in my imagination to faraway places. If you happen to travel in Finland and you see this symbol, then it means that you are near a sightseeing place. Take a chance and see where it takes you. But remember, no luck is guaranteed.